for joining us. We can see a couple are in joining us here. This is Jake and Darren over at Scolmore. We're in our, you can probably hear the rain actually, we're in our studio, aren't we, looking at downlights tonight. So we've got a question that you have put to us. In fact, it probably goes into our helpline. We've got a helpline here over at Scolmore. So across all the brands, so across ESP, across Click, across Unicrimp and across Avaya, we've got a helpline, and the helpline takes on board what you're saying, and as a result we've got lots of questions. You have to remember there are more questions than answers, but me and you will be coming up with some answers. We've got the one tonight is looking at downlights. Do they, all downlights, regardless of where you're putting them, what you're putting in, do they all need to be fire rated, is what we're going to look at. So we're going to be looking at those of you, and it's typically this type of downlight we're looking at, but we've got some others to spend a bit of time with you. So we appreciate you taking the time out of your cold, chilly, it's proper winter now out there, isn't it? It's gone straight from summer to winter.
And
missed the autumn bit out.
Champions League's back.
Yeah, Champions League, so we're not hanging them out, are we?
No.
So, right, so you've got Jake and I going through this question that gets put to us quite a lot of the time, looking at downlighters. So typically the downlighter that we see here, Jake, that we've got a number of to look at, and the question is, should every downlighter be fire rated?
Ooh, it's an interesting one, because I think most manufacturers or most people recognise now that, you know, common practice to actually just put these in, more so than not having the fire rated.
Yeah. So as we go through this, if you want to put any questions to us, you can do. Simply put it in the chat section. We'll be able to take those questions on board as they come in. But looking at this scenario, and Jake said there, people are starting to put these in regardless if they need it or not. And I can understand why. Because when we start to look at it, it's not an easy case of yes or no. When we're starting to look at building controls, each building control will interpret the building regulations slightly differently, and we've got some scenarios of that to discuss for you as well. We've also got NHBC to consider as well. That's something else to talk about, and what they do or what they don't want. And we're going to look at how it can be a little bit easier and things to consider when you're looking to install. So as designers, what you're looking to go with there. I mean, the building regulations, part B of the building regulations, Jake, is probably the thing that really looks at there, and it's all to do with the building structure as itself, and start to look at those brigade and fire rating of stuff. And now it's not just the fire rating of the downlight, but it's fire rating of structures we've got to look at, and this performs a very integral part in that whole structure. And it's this blue band you see here, which is the intermission strip that will give it the fire rating, and the actual solid construction itself gives it the fire rating that we're talking about. Now, typically their fire ratings are at 30, 60 and 90 minutes, Jake. So
that's correct.
So for these,
it's interesting you talk about the three as a complete thing there, so the 1, 2 and 3. Our fittings comply to all three. So the 30, the 60 and the 90. Now, people may ask us, why didn't we just do it to the 90 and then it's the maximum level of protection and just push it out there as one fitting?
Yeah, it sounds easy, doesn't it?
It sounds easy, but it's not as easy as it sounds, because actually when you look at the three individual ratings, the 30, 60 and 90 minute rating, they all have actually different tests. Now, the 90 minute, for example, has a different construction. So the downlight that actually sits within the ceiling will make up of plasterboard, joist, and then maybe a floorboard or something on top of there. So that construction is made up differently for the 90, 60 and 30 minute ones. Now the actual fitting itself has passed all three of those tests. That's good. Within the construction of the 30, 60 and 90 minutes.
Right, okay, so one thing you need to remember when you're starting to fit these, if you think just by going in and ordering one of the lights that's at 90 rated and it's going to then do everything else after it, that's not the case. As Jake clearly said there, you need to be making sure that you're going on these, and it is really about making sure whether it is the 30, whether it's going to be the 60 or the 90. You're lucky with these because they'll do all of them, but you need to make sure that your fittings you're selecting do exactly that. So again, this one here is the one to go for. Now, with regard to Jake talking about the structure, how it's tested, the testing for this one and all these lights here is very, very destructive in the test itself, Jake. What they basically do is they get a structure, and when they're talking about structure, they're talking about plasterboard, then they're talking about the joist, and then they're talking about some sort of flooring construction on top of that as well. And at that point there, they run it through, and it's an area of 4 by 3 meters, and they put it in basically a furnace, and then they do it all up, and at that point there, it starts to burn away. And at that point, they start to time it, so the time's ticking. And what they're trying to do is recreate a normal domestic fire. At that point, once the domestic fire hits its peak, this has still got to perform, but not in isolation. This in the plasterboard with the joists, and then with the flooring on top of that one. That's what we're looking at. It's the whole construction that will go through the tests, not just the light fitting in isolation, Jake.
Oh, okay, so when we say ours is a 90-minute rating there, Darren, or 30, 60 and 90, like you say, it's the construction around it that it needs to pass through as well.
Only in that performance structure would it actually hit that. So yes, you do have to pick the right fitting for the right construction. You're lucky with these, as you said, we've gone through all of them. Also, what we did quite a while ago, we had to go through retesting.
We did, indeed.
Now, no one likes a retest.
No one does.
But it was right for us to go through a retest, and it's all to do with NHBC. So you get longer spans, you're going to be an awful lot better, and at that point there, it's also going to be good for the environment because they're using less timber, less material, and it allows you to take more weight on these as well. Now, it's really, really important that we remember exactly where we're using it and how we're using it, because in conjunction with these new types of joists that we're talking about, the web joist or the eye joist, we really have to worry about its performance. There's less material. Hello mate, you're back.
I'm back, yeah.
Thanks for that. No one know a thing.
No one will know a thing. I need my mouse.
So when you're talking about the construction methods we're using this in conjunction with this, it's clear that there is less material there to burn. So if there was going to be a failing, Jake, at that point when the failing happens, it is going to burn quicker. NHBC recognised this fact, and they started to then look at what would happen, and they in fact started to request that all lights went through a retest. And the retest was because, as it clearly says here, they were worried about the fact that these were being installed with these metal web joists, or these were being installed in conjunction with those eye joists. So we went through a complete retest, and you can get hold of this if you want. Go to an HBC website, have a look at this one, and ask this question, Jake, here. Recessed light fittings in ceilings to intermediate floors in houses. Now we'll come on to looking at this intermediate bit in a minute, won't we? Start to look at this. And it's saying here, the answer, right, solid timber joists. Solid timber joists, we know full well, take a long while to burn. There's a lot more material there, a long while to fail. But it's going on here, it says, non-rated downlighters. Who on earth would put a non-fire rated downlighter in here?
Well, some of the guys that are on the chat now are just saying for the cost and the price difference, you may as well fit them.
Yeah, you may as well fit them. It's saying if you're going to put something up there without, it's going on here. It said, you shall look to install fire rated hoods. Do you remember them?
I do remember them, and I did a job once whereby it was in I think it was a restaurant of some description, but actually I was replacing the lights in there for fire rated downlights. I couldn't ever get to the connections because they'd stapled the hoods on top and then built the construction over the top. Right, again, no one wants to fit them. They're an absolute nightmare. So again, it's absolute nightmare. So this one here, fire rated downlighters, it's saying in conjunction with those I-beams, it says here, for engineered joists, this is what we're talking about here. It is recommended that all recessed downlighters be of fire resistant or have the hoods fitted. So that's pretty much they're saying. This is NHBC are saying you will fit these in all. Doesn't matter whether it's on the ground floor to upstairs into the loft, wherever. They want these types of fittings installed. Now that's NHBC. Now I know that NHBC. If you want to argue that, having worked with NHBC in the past, they were saying that they were not signing off any installations unless they could see evidence that these fittings, Jake, were compliant with that I-beam or that metal web joists. So if they're not going to sign it off, you ain't getting paid. It's funny because actually in there it doesn't mention anything about. Well, it says it's the 60 minutes for the higher than that.
Yeah, so it goes on to mention here that the intermediate floor that we're talking about, 30 minutes for a floor where it's up less than 5 metres. Anything taller than 5 metres, it's saying that them floors there should be 60 minutes. So again, 3-storey buildings, 60 minutes they're going to be asking for there. For a single storey or 2-storey, they're going to be asking for 30 minutes.
It's going to be the same fitting that we would use.
Yeah, we'd go installing that
Right.
same fitting, having had it checked against all those different variants. So you're talking about 3 different times, you're talking about normal joists, you're talking about webbed joists, you're talking about eye joist as well, the multiples are out there, so you've got all those considerations.
I know you mentioned all these different documents, you've got the NHBC one, you've got the Part B, the approved document Part B. BS7671, talk to me about that. Anything that we need to be aware of?
No, it pushes again back into other regulations, and Part B is where we really need to pretty focus, because Part B has a different... People just think about Part B differently in different postcodes, Jake. So your local building control will look at Part B and they'll say, hold on a minute, if you're not breaking through the envelope, we've heard some building controls call it, there's no need to worry. So what are they talking about there? So
the envelope is where they're talking about the whole building itself. So I imagine the triangle is the little bit you lick on the back. But anyway, so yeah, it talks about the whole building itself, and what they're trying to achieve there is to stop the transfer of heat build-up or anything to do with any flames being pushed across to another building. So that's the envelope that they're describing it as. Yeah. So at this point there, they're saying it cannot spread from one dwelling to another. That's what building regulations are pushing down. So if you think about it, between the 2 floors, is that a fire barrier? Well, it's got half our fire barrier attached to it and trying to stop, again, some passage of fire from one area to the other. But we're concerned with a 68mm hole and filling that and making sure that is absolutely packed full of fire-resistant property. And then what do we see? Just poking your head into the hallway. Big stairwell for all that heat and smoke to go up. But again, it's about the structure. We're trying to ensure the integrity of the structure at that point. So again, it's coming down to looking at those. Now, at this point, we'll probably say, now building control are different. I'll give you a fantastic scenario, this one. When I had my extension done, I had a vaulted ceiling. And at that point on the vaulted ceiling, the building control guy said, without a doubt, you will not be having downlighters in this ceiling. Within the same borough, I knew someone else that was having some work done on an extension, went round to see how they were getting on. Vaulted ceiling, loads of downlights were first fixed and they're tacked over the top as well. When that building control officer got round, again, said that you will not be putting downlighters in that vaulted ceiling. And again, it was all around Part B. He was saying it's Part B in the building regulations, you will not be going anywhere near that. I don't want anything near that, and just wouldn't let them go anywhere near it because of his interpretation of Part B of the building regulations. Now, our downlights in particular, they also comply with another part of the building regulations, don't they?
Yeah, now the little gasket on here, some people say it gets in the way, it doesn't really sit right. Well, the little gasket is for compliance with 2 other parts of the building regulations here. So we're looking there for reverberation of the passage of sound to stop that. So that's from one part to another part. Now this is probably, again, this is hard because you're looking for that between dwellings more than anything else, but it all has a bit of an effect here. So the gasket there is for that, also for moisture, which is another part we have to look for and start to
so for
those.
Places like, if we're going to put them in bathrooms, etc., then anything.
You've got it. Yeah, you've got it. Absolutely got that. Now, another part we need to just look at here is these also help you comply with Part L of the building regulations. So Part L being energy efficiency and the conservation of fuel. If you look at L1, A and B, which is for new and existing dwellings, they also help you comply with those, and it's 75% of them will need you to comply with these. And just whacking these in the kitchen, the bathrooms and stuff like that, Jake, you're well on your way to comply with that standard and how that standard works. Now, that's only for new dwellings that have got more than 5 light fittings.
Crazy. Most houses are going to have more than 5 light fittings, aren't they?
If you think about it, one for the kitchen, one for the toilet, one for a bedroom, one for a living room,
bathroom.
Yeah, you're going to have to have it, ain't you? You're going to have to have those, but only very small studio flats or something like that, but they're going to...
Now, I noticed on this tag, we spoke a little bit as well earlier on about fire hoods. On ours, we can't put the insulation over the top of it, can we?
Yeah, now, again, the building control officer, when he came to mine, was on about looking at building regulations in line with Part B, and he was also looking at actually the insulation. So in order to comply with the insulation requirements of vaulted ceilings especially, they need a hell of a lot of insulation in there. If you put insulation around these, they're going to get hot, they're going to burn out. especially if you lay in loose insulation onto the top of these, Jake, and that's why ours has got a big sign there to say you shouldn't be doing that. You cannot put insulation on the top of these. That's a driver in there.
That is, it does. But however, our fittings in particular, we have a little bracket that you can sit over the top, which will actually separate the insulation away from the top of the fitting.
Yep.
And I know on the latest version of these, we've got the Omni Inceptors here, and I'm sure many of you have fitted these. We have now moved actually the driver into the flow connector.
Yeah, so we're actually moving it into these larger flow connectors now, so you won't have any heat coming out of there at all. It's all taken care of by the driver down here, which means you can lay insulation over the top of it without any problem at all.
Yep.
But if you're looking at our instructions, they're asking for 150mm around these to ensure that you are keeping enough area for heat to dissipate in and around the fittings. So it's important you recognise that when you're looking here. So there's quite a lot to think about there, isn't there? So
there is, yeah. And I noticed as well, we just had a question in from one of the chaps down. I know we were going to talk about this a bit later, but about the flow connectors.
Yep.
Someone's saying, do the flow connectors come with all of your fittings? Majority of the fittings do come with the flow connector. We are getting very close. There is the odd one or two Downlight that actually doesn't come with the flow connector, but they're great little products, and they're very easy to use, as you can see.
This is our new. This is Screwless Technology.
Screwless Technology. There is some screws on the top of this. I've already undone them because otherwise it'd be a pain. But you just pinch the sides, then you can get into it. And something that I learned.
I always struggled this bit. This is the bit we used to struggle with.
But you can actually take that middle piece out.
I never knew until this evening you could do that. So that's going to be easy to do.
And then push fit connectors that can go in there as well. So do your connections. Plug it all back in.
Now the advantages of this one are technical advantages as well, so we don't mind talking about this. If you're looking to do insulation resistance testing, or you're looking to find a lot of your testing, we've seen the guys at Mega, the fantastic guys at Mega, they've got this as a lead. So at that point there, you can just simply start to plug in and then you get in your readings. It makes it really, really easy, doesn't it, when you're starting to do your testing there for these. So again, unplugging them will mean you can do the insulation resistance testing, and then you can get your ZS values very, very easily and safely with the use of the flow connector again onto those. So that's helpful for you guys. We're saying people are liking the gasket, and Simon, good evening Simon, fantastic to see you again joining us, and these are really good, but again they're there for the reasons that we've mentioned. It helps with the reverberation, the passage of sound, and it also helps with the requirement there for moisture, the transferring of moistures. But it's important we look at construction of anything that's going into ceilings really, and you've got here today, you've got this one looking at these panels. So panels we see into ceiling grids, and if we're starting to pop these into ceiling grids, Jake, people are saying then they need to be fire related. And now putting this in a ceiling, one of these plasterboard ceilings, you've got a good argument there, should or shouldn't it be? But sticking it into ceiling grid, surely it doesn't have to be, does it?
Well, when we start to look at the ceiling grid, it's there for decorative reasons. And I know this because I've done a lot of research with the premature collapse side of things. Yeah. So it's for decorative reasons only, so it's not structure of the building.
Okay.
When that ceiling grid starts to get hot, the chances are this metal is going to start to warp. That's on the ceiling above us, and it's going to collapse. So.
Yeah, so again, you're not looking at a fire or any fire rating there at all, really. We know that some people can come with a fire rating, so at that point there, you need to know and you need to talk to the people of that building and start to think about installing these, but typically, suspended ceilings, no. If you're looking to install panelled solutions into these, we need to talk about TPA and TPB. Well, I say we do. Jake does. He's
restricted and non-restricted.
Yeah. So, what does it mean first of all? TPA and TPB.
It's all to do with the material that's being used here. TPA is whereby it doesn't drip. So if there was some heat underneath it, it wouldn't drip. TPB would suggest that actually it would start to drip.
It could, yeah.
It could drip,
yeah. Under that heat. Now this all goes back to building regulations again. Building regulations, approved document B2 will look at this and what you can or can't use, and it's going to give you two numbers. It's going to look at floor area, Jake.
Yep.
So for a small area, you can go with that stuff that is restricted. So you can go TPB. So anything, and again, have a look to make sure you're installing the right ones. For larger areas, such as halls, open offices, stuff like that. So for larger floor areas, you're going to have to go for the TPA variety that will not allow anything to drop onto anyone that's in that area or trying to use the area to get out. Mm-hmm. That's the reason behind this, is to make sure that we're going with those TPA and TPB. So for those ones there. Now, it's important that you do get that right, it's important you do get this bit right, and again, it's really important that you as designers are selecting the equipment that's going to be fit for you. What we've done as manufacturers, and when we're talking to the manufacturing team, is making sure that it's as easy for you as possible by making sure that our products go through all the tests. Really taking a lot of the guesswork out of it, aren't we?
Exactly that, yeah. Just looking at some of the questions here, it's nice to see Ben joining us this evening. He said, what should we be coding non-fire rated downlighters on EICRs? I believe that's meant to be. Often it's a building reg and not be a 7671 reg, but 76 on the tick sheet talks about sealed to restrict fire, and non-fire rated wouldn't meet this.
Now, this regulation, going back to looking at it, it was all around about the electrical installation, and not just looking at stuff like this, but looking at the electrical installation with regard to fire barriers. So that's where conduit was passing through what's known as a firewall and stuff like that, where you put in back. And we all know that the requirement is, if you're taking out, you must replace with something that is equal or greater than that which you removed. That's basically the regulation in a nutshell there we're looking to do. And I believe that yes, it would be part of the requirement there. You've got to look at, is it a real and immediate danger? Is it going to give someone a shock? Is it on flames now? No, it's not. So it's definitely not going to be a C1, is it? Does it have the potential to do that? And you can know this by having a look. How long has it been there? What's the potential risk? And then you can decide whether it's going to be a C2, or you have a look at this and say, this light fitting has been up there for God knows how many years, it's not a fire rated one, yes there is a problem here, it requires improvement, in which case you probably give it the C3. There's a really good argument for just a C3 there.
And I think again, when we start to look at this, it all depends on where you are, because like you say, if your borough council are really strict on this type of thing, where they're saying, no, we believe that the envelope is between floors, because they could see that as a view, then I think you're going to code it appropriately depending on what they say.
Now again, downlighters aren't fit for everywhere. We've spoken today an awful lot about plasterboard. I've seen people try and fit these in lava and plaster, Jake.
Oh.
The hole gets a whole lot bigger when you're trying to fit these. They are not fit. Downlighters are not fit for everywhere. We've also seen people want to keep the aesthetics this side, but it absolutely ruins the structure that side. It's really important that we do not go altering the structure of a ceiling to accept downlighters. Apart from the removal of plasterboard or the material to allow these to be inserted, we should not go messing with the structural integrity, which again is in line with that approved document B. And we know the testing that goes into it. We spoke about a 4 by 3 metre area that allows this to go into, and again at that point there it's really important we don't mess with it too much. So unfortunately this does lead to some particularly difficult conversations with customers, saying, look, I think it'd be great, but you can't have them, you've got to have this and stuff like that. And it's just new ways of lighting, isn't it? And how we can get around that now.
And the last question before we start to wrap things up: are the latest versions of your downlighters any more resilient to higher voltages in the north of England, like 245 plus? Earlier units struggle with the higher voltages. On the back of the units itself, it does say that it's up to 240 volts. I will clarify that for you when we can get something out to you, hopefully. If you just want to drop a message to the page on Facebook, and then we can get your details and get in contact with you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jonathan. It's really important that we understand what is happening out there. We know that there is a tolerance in here. It does say 220 to 240. That's the nominal voltage that we're sort of working with there. If you're seeing spikes, then we can sort of appreciate that. But if it's a constant, then we may have to again look at what we're doing and how we're going to work it. It may be that we use voltage optimization as our next tool.
No.
Never say no, Jake, never say no. So yeah, again, so we appreciate all of you taking the time out of your evenings, especially on a wet, cold, miserable evening as it is today, to come and join me and Jake. We apologise for the slight interruption.
Yeah, I'm going to get in trouble for that.
Yeah, just when we get off here, Jake's going to get a rather stern talking to for this one. But look, we're going to do this once a month now. This is the first one with the team over at Avaya. Look out, because there's a new catalogue that's been coming out. Lots more in there to help you. Lots more in the range. Again, just filling some of them gaps that we felt we had and you were feeding back to us. So that's going to be available for you. And again, via your wholesaler, or you can get it via our website. So have a look for that. It's issue 3 we're going to be going with there, and that's got lots of stuff in there to make it slightly easier out there for you. All the information we've been talking about you can find in the catalogues, such as the TPA, the TPB. That's got all that information in there.
30, 60, 90 minutes as well was in there.
Yeah, it's got all the information you want is going to be here. We tried to add the technical stuff in here so it's easier for you to find as well and reference if you ever needed to. So from me and from Jake, until next time, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's been fantastic to see so many of you in. Please add loads of comments and questions and we'll pick them up next time. So once a month you're going to see me and Jake delivering stuff like this. Let us know what you want to talk about next, and until next time.